Hi. Long ago, many years ago, at one of the first Polyglot Gatherings, I gave a talk called Boost Your Vocabulary in Non-European Languages, a look at affix systems. And I was comparing examples from Hebrew, Indonesian, Swahili, Chinese, Esperanto, and modern Greek and German, just for comparison, but to show that there is really something universal. I don't believe in Chomsky's universal grammar, but I do believe that when it comes to vocabulary and how to create words from other words, from common roots and so on, there is something of a system that could be universal. So I want to go over some of these features so that you can look for them in your languages. And I won't do the full presentation like I did at the gathering, just a quick summary because I was asked about this and there was no recording. So I'm re-recording the essence. Let's go. First, the first kind of affix that you will find in basically every language is one for people. There are actually several different kinds of people affixes that you can think of, and I later wrote a third paper for Chinese linguistics where I compared like the different, actually there's like 6 or 7 different affixes that Chinese has for people, but in order to make everything a bit more regular and systematic, I will refer to the Esperanto people suffixes, which are very distinct uses. So in Esperanto, there is the anto suffix, which is for someone who's currently doing something. In fact, it's the participle present active, if you think about it. So, for example, canti, to sing, cantando, the singer, as in the person who's currently singing. Then there is the ulo suffix, so canti becomes cantullo. This is someone who's regularly singing, for example, as part of a hobby choir, or someone who just loves to tidy the house, singing along, this kind of thing, but not singing right now, if you can find it. And then Esperanto has a third kind of suffix for people, which is isto, Francisco. This is a professional, even East, like the English word dentist, for example. And these tend to be professionals. So in English, we don't have this East thing for professionals, but also we have the ER ending, like singer, which is kind of inconclusive. You can't say whether it's someone who's singing right now, or someone who regularly sings as part of a choir or just as a habit. So in some languages, we find this distinction, and that is why I thought it would be useful to look at the suffixes with this distinction. So in Hebrew, for example, we have the antu, the equivalent of antu, someone who's currently doing something that is generally the same as the present tense verb. So you have the verb mesaper, which within it's the infinitive, and mesaper is the present tense form, the tell, and the tells, and it's the same word for someone who's currently telling stories, storytelling. Begins and beginner are the same words, participates and participants are the same word. Then in Indonesian, you actually change the word, you use a pit prefix. So mengajar becomes pengajar, membeli becomes pembeli, menjual becomes penjual. So teach, teacher, buy, buyer, sell, seller. In Swahili, you have a M or MW prefix. This depends on whether the following sound is a vowel or a consonant. So already it's a bit more irregular, but in fact, most natural languages are vastly more irregular when it comes to this compared to English, compared to Esperanto. And of course, there's the issue that they just have many many prefixes and suffixes that can serve the same purpose, and for some verbs you just can't create these things. I mean, technically we can put er on the ending of any verb, but with some verbs it will sound really funny. Let's say, for example, hinderer. It's not as obvious as a singer or a listener. So anyway, in Swahili we see this the M prefix, like kusikiliza, musikiliza, because you also need the suffix zi. So it's a double thing. You need the prefix and the suffix, and that might make it hard to recognize the word when you have a very short root, like imba. Imba is just the infinitive. So imba is the real root, and then you put stuff before and after, and you may not realize that imbaji is related to the imba. In Chinese, it's easier again. You just have the zhe suffix. Sanjia, sanjia, here, the main difficulty is that learners will generally just learn the word ting or to listen, and for the full word listener, you need the full the two-character word for the listeners is ting ting, and you get ting ting. When it comes to people that regularly do something, this is where Hebrew is harder than most other languages, except Arabic and other Semitic ones, is because it changes the vowels as well, the vowels within the stem. And this is regularly a part of Hebrew changes for when it creates different words. In this case, the infinitive is affix, and you see there is the a and the e vowel in there, and the e just gets dropped regularly. Gets dropped. This the second vowel gets dropped when you create words like safkan and rakdan, fire and dancer. In Swahili, again, you just use the v prefix and z instead of z. In Chinese, you tend to use jia, but it's complicated. They have a lot of different suffixes for people, and they don't quite map onto the same system that we have. For more details, consult my paper where I compare Esperanto and Chinese suffixes for people, and which suffixes exist and why they use a particular suffix like jia or jia or other things. And in Hebrew, again, you have the issue with the vowels. So when you're talking about a professional, as opposed to someone who's currently doing something, you remember when they're currently doing something, the until kind of situation, the Hebrew word stays the same as the present tense. When you have the ulu, you have one kind of change, and for the isto, you have a different kind of change, which includes actually you have two different changes here, so it's even more complicated. You have a you put a or a pattern in the vowel places, and you use the base form the vowels, then make prefix that we will use for but this is getting too in depth. I don't want to teach you Hebrew suffixes here, just to alert you to the possibility that this exists and you can look out for it because you see it everywhere. And then let's also mention the possibility that when it comes to istoforms, they're talking about professionals. There are also regularly forms for that are based on a noun. So in the case of music, musician. See, in English you have a shen on some not all the time. Or you can write newspaper and journalist. See, sometimes English uses a completely different word. Well, I guess journalist was the Eastern sense. So yeah, you can try some of these, just put them into translation, see if you can find a relation between words like music, musician, physics, physician, mathematics, mathematician. There might be a similar pattern in your language, even when it's a non-word language. And that's what this presentation is mainly about, because when you're studying European languages, you have so many words that you can just learn as cognates, especially when it comes to this kind of derivatives. But in non-European languages, you really have to look and figure out how do they do these derivative words. And in Swahili, again, you can find something, you can have a one-up prefix for some group from noun-derived people, like physicists, like I said, and the two prefix for group-derived people. People who do the shading, products. In Chinese, it's again. In Greek, just for comparison, of course, this also exists in European languages. Languages like Greek, it might actually help because they are less cognates. In Greek, it would generally change to cos a. This is cos, this is cos, okay, long section on people. Now, let's talk about other nouns that can be derived from verbs. One is about a process or a longer time period of doing something, which in Esperanto would be the ade. So drinking, to drink alcohol, drinkado, drinking, or boozing, in this case, because of stuff. So in Hebrew, you have to recall, you can be, sorry, figure again, you have to watch out for the vowels. But this is a pattern. You see, in the first case, the verb has an O, and in the second case, the noun has an ER pattern. And you just arrange the consonants and you translate around. In Greek, you have isma, asma, ending diavazo, diavazo, baptizo, baptisma, capnismo, capnisma. You also see that the accent change is regular. And he was sorry, I'm just reviewing this presentation with like changes from many years ago. Then nouns based on verbs can also be something that you use for it, or the result of using this, of doing this, like writing, we write, like reading, we read, with play, we play a game. The typical object of the this in Hebrew would have the main prefix, as you can see in the examples. In Swahili, it would have the an suffix. So first you need to know the root of the verb, memberi, menjual, bekerja. They have different prefixes for verbs, but it doesn't matter because you take only the root part when you add an. If we flip from buy to purchases, if we sell to sales, from work to works. So sometimes it works in English, and sometimes not quite. I mean, purchases, we can be able to purchase, so that works, but sales is already not exactly the same, and as the words here just have to be fixed out. In Esperanto, we have the advantage that it never breaks down. You can always use age, you can always add age as anything, and you must not create it when you express it. In Swahili, we have the ma prefix here. We use a mauzo, the maonyesho. So to show and exhibition, for example, it's not a place where English place that will show something. And let's go on. You can also talk about a place where something takes place. If it takes place in a drinking, to drink alcohol takes place in a drinkayu. So drinkayu is a bar. But it could be any place that serves alcohol, even if it's like one room at the Polyglot Gathering where you can drink alcohol. In German and English, we generally use I, in German I, and in English I, suffix, but it's very, very limited. So it's generally used for places in town, like the bakery, the library, the Bäckerei, Metzgerei, Bücherei in German. But you can't use it as a drinking place to drink. No. So that only works in completely regular languages. So like this word. But in other languages, non-European languages, you will have words that don't have an English equivalent, but that use the same pattern. And it's all about the patterns. So here, for example, in Hebrew, sorry, my Hebrew pronunciation is probably awful because I haven't studied it in many years, but it means restaurant. The dine is the verb for the dine is the basis for the noun the restaurant. The writing table is the basic is based on the verb to write. Also in Arabic, the verb to write leads to maktab, which can be a desk or a office. And this is was taken over by Swahili. So in Swahili, they still have the word kitabu, the book, and maktaba, as well as maktaba, library. However, so places generally have a pages in Swahili. Coffee and cafe. Another place where English just can't do it, but in Esperanto it's kafo, cafe. This is why when it comes to inline translation of text, like word for word literal translation of text, I really like when they're translated into Esperanto because then you can see how these words work. Even if it's not the natural Esperanto word, you can create a word that has the same kind of suffixes so that you understand that here it's the word for coffee and it has a yolk place suffix. Or for Chinese, we have a dian suffix, fan dian, shu dian, book and bookstore, not only. Idiom is for tools. So it's not the same as something written, but something used to write. Scribilo, scrivi to write, scribilo, the tool for writing, which can be a pen or a pencil or even some chalk. The point is it's a tool for writing. And that is what I was trying to say about the direct literal translations. If you have a text in a language that has a word for scribilo, and you have to translate it to English, you might wind up with writing with pencil, or the translation might just use pen or pencil, whatever is appropriate. But in Esperanto, you can keep this the word formation. In Hebrew, we have some tools like the computer is considered a tool for calculating. The screwdriver is a tool for screwing. The printer is a tool for printing. And notice again the vowel pattern, which comes with sort of there's a prefix, mark, and then you have a particular vowel pattern which you need for clues. In Chinese, we have Z, which is pretty much an equivalent of ilo, except you can't use it as widely. But even like motor is called a tool for moving. Don't move. Fluency is a motor. Fake, fly, fancy, airplane. In English, we're kind of lacking this. I mean, we're kind of reusing the ER ending, which we already used for people. So in English, you can't actually distinguish between a person who regularly prints something or a person that flies. Sorry, you can't distinguish between a person that flies and a tool for flying because you just have a different word for airplane. But when it comes to the printer nowadays is considered a tool for printing, but some centuries back it was the person who printed. And sometimes it's still used that way in English. So it really helps when you have a language that has a separate suffix for this tool. But in any case, there are suffixes like the ER in English that can be used to learn tools. Just if you're looking for this, just put in like to fly and airplane. Put move, remover, print, printer. Printer is probably the most likely to work unless they're using the English properly. You can put this into your dictionary and see if there might be a pattern. In German, again, it's an ER suffix, and we actually use it for computer. We have calculator is computer. So thanks for that. Then there's the issue that very often languages want to create adjectives based on a noun, like religion, religious. Problematic. You see, in English, it's not exactly very regular. You have us ending, you have attic ending, and you can find a lot more words for both of these patterns. In Hebrew, it's T or E ending, that, the ayat. Then in Swahili, you have a key prefix to go from tourist to touristic, from leaf to leafy. It's another way of English. It's not just with this and it, but also the simple E, leafy. In Esperanto, it's always O ending becoming A. In Chinese, you can't use the same word without any suffix except possibly do. Soon be, soon be there. Fraternal, and of course, it can be the same characteristic. Then in Greek, we have because as an ending, Pedro centered, Pedricos centric. Yes. Really means sorry, central. Sorry, my English was pretty bad when I was thinking about other languages. Pioneer, Pionikos, in German, Gesellschaft, Gesellschaftlich. So I put several different examples for German. You have ich suffix in German, you have ich suffix in German, and you have ich suffix in German, and I consider them to be a continuum. Whether you want to end something with the letters IG or actually ICH. Actually, half the time that something ends in IG, it's actually pronounced ICH. And then there's the ISH ending, which is like another alternative, but they kind of have the same theory. And you still have to learn which one is which, but I also see them approaching generally becoming more similar, especially as some parts of the population don't pronounce the E as in Gesellschaftlich, but Gesellschaftlich. Some accents and in varieties. You can also change an adjective to a noun that describes a property. So, like, to go from religious to religiosity, or easy to ease. In English, it often has a suffix t or less, like liberty and nothingness and goodness, and good and goodness. So problematicness, I guess. In Hebrew, it will be ut ending. This is also useful if you're reading Hebrew without vowels. You can tell that all of these ut words are probably S words in Esperanto or nes words in English. In Swahili, with the u prefix, here's some more English examples. Childhood, human mankind, important qualities. So you see English is all over the place. Usawa, equal equality. That's like no, it's not that leader is Latin here. So English makes it harder, but it's sometimes copying just the Latin liberty, like function getting, but then forgetting to copy the adjective. So yeah, English is a mess, also because it's between Germanic and Romance. Basically, every other language will have a better affixes than English, and as well as the most regular. If you're trying to learn generally what kind of things affixes can do and how to combine and how to do what kind of things, and that's right. Esperanto really gave me a great overview that I've used for every single language I've learned after that. Fortunately, I learned it at 14 years old. So when I started learning Chinese, I started learning Swahili, Indonesian, Hebrew, Arabic, I was always able to fall back into Esperanto. This doesn't make sense in English, but it totally makes sense in the classic. Here is Chinese suffix. And here is Greek. With the ia or ia, suffix avos was avostia, espalos espalia, almo was ia. In German, the height suffix will also be height suffix. And finally, a suffix that is way more common, which is the mal to create a opposite. In Esperanto, we can use mal to create the opposite of anything. Like bella, beautiful, malbella, ugly. But you can also use it for nouns like lumo, the light, mallumo, darkness. Or healthy, to help, malhealthy, to hinder. It's always for opposites, and it has no positive or negative connotation. In Hebrew, you can use it, you can use the if prefix for the same thing, and it's used for adjectives and nouns. So, like understanding, misunderstanding. In English, you can't say understanding. You can say unstableness. From stable, stableness, unstable, and if prefix is also used in the case of rational, irrational. So in English, you basically switch between and if, except when you have miss and prefix. And in Swahili, this is an interesting case because they only have it for verbs. So see, in Hebrew and also in English, we don't have this for verbs, basically. We don't have the opposite for verbs. You can't say for unhelpfulness. But in Swahili, it's only used for verbs. And the difference is so slight that I really had trouble with this until I understood that it was the same as putting a mal in Esperanto. Like the two verbs, kupulia and kupulua, close and to open. It's just different by one vowel, which really gets lost in different suffixes and prefixes for Swahili conjugation. And it's like a complete opposite verb, of course, and to open. And in Esperanto, you can beautifully remember this because close is fermi from French family, and to open is mal fermi. And there's no other verb for to open, so you already know that it's the equivalent case open. All of these can be translated to Esperanto. The papa to kapua, load to unload. Here we have an example of Esperanto of English actually using the un prefix for verbs, but it's very, very rare. Like this, it can be unhelped or unclose. In Chinese, you have these mainly four adjectives with the prefix pei, it's not completely irregular because you have two character word, two syllable word in most cases, which gets reduced to one syllable when you add the thing in front of it. So then you have to know which part of the two character, which character of the two you have to drop, and then you add the thing in front. In Greek, you have the prefix a, which can take the place of the f in against, but otherwise it just prefixes as a and dinatron, usually used with unmuted, where possible, impossible. The first one was polite, impolite, against, impolite, dinatron, impossible. And in the case of words that already start with a, like asphalos, you add an anything. So unasphalos. Insecure. Secure. Another thing that you can see in lots of languages is egg and et suffixes. So egg is for making something stronger, and et is for something smaller or weaker. So in Hebrew, I haven't really found the equivalent of the egg, and I'm sure it doesn't exist, to intensify a meaning, to make something bigger. But in Chinese and in a lot of languages, this is accomplished by duplicating the word. So in English, I guess it's a colloquial use to say, are you sure? Instead of just, are you sure? Maybe also immigrants brought this use because it's very different in all of India. In Chinese, it's like in that way, so da and da, like big, huge. And the fun part about Chinese is that you don't necessarily duplicate the whole word, you duplicate each syllable. So vowels, which means happy, becomes vowel xinxin, overjoyed. And qingchu, kind of clear, becomes qingqing chuchu. Super clear. In Swahili, you have this duplication for repeated actions. Piga becomes piga, vuka becomes vuka, in Greek, you have ara as a suffix, matsara, a big nut, gata, batara, a big cat. After finito, the car, after finitara. This shows you it's a productive prefix. It can still be used for anything, even modern words like car, you can just put ara in there. And even names, like you can use this. If you have a friend called Janis, you can say Janis. Et makes something smaller, or generally, in English, you actually have an example of this kitchen and kitchenette, or book and booklet. But it's not very common in English. In Esperanto, it's everywhere. And in Hebrew, it's generally the on suffix, which is also used to distinguish a computer and a calculator, or sometimes just the same way. In Swahili, you have a key prefix, so child and a child. You don't know people. Sahani, Kisahani, both themselves. In Chinese, it becomes the QD. So this is actually interesting because something became bigger. Well, this duplication is for a more intense meaning for adjectives, but it's for a smaller meaning when it comes to nouns. So you have go, which is go, and go is a doggy. Normal is a little cat. And you have the R suffix, which can also be easier. So high, so high. I also another way to say this. It's the duplication you can use. Not always. As a language learner, you probably want to not use these actively, except for add and to yourself bigger. You don't really have to figure it out, but you can use these actively. It's just to help you learn vocabulary when you see it used, but you know you can use it more, which really comes from. And just play with it and see what works. In Greek, you also have this utsikos to make something smaller, kind of fish, kind of tasty, kind of expensive. The utsikos in suffix, which I guess in English only exists at ish, like red-ish color. I will give an example. Like you can't say fresh-ish, everything, or tasty-ish, expensive-ish, So yeah, in natural languages, you always have to try whether something is possible, ask the native speaker, or just learn the words that you come across. Whereas in Esperanto, and in some cases, you can learn this as a rule, you can use the suffixes whenever you want to any kind of way. And the Greek utsikos is also like this. You can use it for basically every word, even if you've never actively used it. The final part, and also the hardest, because sensitivity is a hard concept for English speakers, and there's no real equivalent in English, but in a lot of Slavic languages, for example, or generally languages around the globe, like from Swahili to Indonesian and Chinese, you have this kind of transitivity signal. Probably in South American and North American languages as well, but I haven't studied those examples. Just look at this and learn that you might come across this feature. For a suffix to have the role of change it to break and to be broken, to close and be closed, to change something versus to be changed. Or the opposite, to instead of close, to make something close. Instead of to eat, to make someone eat, as instead of sleep, to put someone to sleep. Instead of to give birth, to deliver to make someone give birth, literally. And Swahili, the first set is with the ika suffix, and the second set is with the isha suffix. Like to make someone is isha, and in Esperanto would be ibi. And the other kind, to be or to become broken, is ika, and in Esperanto ichi. In Greek, you just have the medial passive for the first set. So ome, all these words that look like passive, but they're not. And for the second kind, you have iso suffix. So this is also used when creating verbs based on nouns or adjectives, like the noun, the decision, apofasi, becomes apofasizo, to make a decision. The adjective secure, asfalis, becomes asfalizo, to secure something. The number 0, even, becomes evenizo, to zero something. Really, it means to destroy. And I've given Esperanto equivalence because it works wherever. In Hebrew, this also exists mainly for the EG kind, the becoming kind, so the organized and the deorganized, like to change and to become change, to be changed. This is the hard part of translating to English, is because like the verb to change, it is both. It's both kinds of translate, right? Because I change, I don't know, the size of the font, and the size of the font is changed. It changes. it changes, I change something, and it changes is technically the same verb, but it has a completely different meaning if you think about it, right? Because in one case, I cause something to change, and in the other case, it is changed, it becomes changed. Or I forgot another English examples, but there are tons of them. There are tons of them in English where English just uses the same verb for me doing something to an object and the object changing as a result of that action. The object is the same word in English. Yeah, here's another example. To break. I break the window breaks. This is where all languages except English, but not all languages, but many languages other than English would use a suffix to mark either the breaking, the active action, or the being broken, the window is broken, the window breaks, as the recipient of that action. And an action that can have an object versus an action that cannot have an object. You will see it that way. But really it's about who does something and what has something done to it. Like again, organize, and which again to be organized. Okay, and this is like the hardest, but also the most useful thing to be aware of. And okay, sorry, I have one more. Again, I'm just redoing part of this presentation from many years ago. So in Indonesian, we have nun, or nun prefix depending on the following letter. For to become verbs, become bigger, become smaller, or to unite. And nun literally is a nun prefix. And again, this could be represented in Esperanto with the eg suffix, like literally to unite in Esperanto is unu eg. Unu is one, unu eg. Small, malgrandigi, it becomes small. You can translate it directly, and in English you need the extra word, or you have a different word as in case of the beginning. And the eg part that makes something happen is a non prefix in Indonesian, which can become confusing when we have non also for Egypt, for the becoming point. But in this case, it's mainly for verbs. So you replace the verb or verb with a non and can suffix. So the can is also in this page. Non can is getting it. Belajar, ajar is learning. Belajar to learn. Non ajar can teach. But non ajar is also teach. So it's not completely logical. To stop something. This is another example of English being confusing. Like I stop the clock and the clock stops. Same word in English. But there's actually a difference in what action is. Okay, and I think that was the last example. So really what I wanted to present is that these systems exist globally, seems, in all languages, or at least in the major language branches, including very distinct ones. So it seems that humans always had a need to create more than one verb from a word root, and usually there are patterns. Create a person from the verb, to create an adjective from a verb, from a noun, to create a verb from an adjective, to create a place where something is done. We like to use a verb, and to butcher and create a noun, butchery, for the place where that happens. To have a word for a tool to do something, or for the thing that, or the physical object of the verb to eat food. The words for eat and food are related in all languages. Like in English, to drink and the drink. And bigger, smaller, more intense, less intense versions. Opposites, very important in other words for opposites. I think this prefix mal in Esperanto by itself reduces the need to learn like half of all words, because every word is like the opposite of something else. There are very few things that are not the opposite of something that you can think of. And this transitivity thing, intransitivity, or rather becoming and doing something, making someone do something or making something happen. These are the main kinds of suffixes and prefixes that we can look for. So, really, if you're learning a European language, you may be fine. You may just don't use all those coordinates to learn the basic patterns and to get used to what's happening in the language. If you're learning a non-European language, this is my recommendation. Look at these systems, look for patterns, read up, like, I don't know, put some questions in Google, Swahili suffixes, or Japanese suffixes, or Japanese word construction patterns, Indonesian word construction patterns. Or if there's no such guide for you, just put in some words and see if they might be similar, if you can spot the pattern without it having been explained to you. For example, if you put regular, irregular, safe, unsafe, opposites into the translator, into a dictionary, see if there is a pattern you can spot. You probably have to try several different words before you see a pattern emerge, because languages are irregular, they have more than one way of converting between, more than one pattern for each thing that you want to accomplish, usually, and some words that just don't fit the pattern, even though they could. The only language that I know of that is completely regular in this usage is Esperanto, but it may be that some agglutinative language also has a very, very regular pattern system for at least some of these use cases. And anyway, if you know the patterns, you find it much easier to learn a lot of vocabulary quickly. You can recognize words, you can see what's happening, you can understand why the word for the office is the same word as desk. In, say, Arabic, I was studying with that, or like Funga and Fumbua are not at all the same thing in Swahili. It helps. I found it super helpful, and I hope that you do too. So, good luck with your language studies.